Do twins run in your family? As a twin parent, you've probably been asked this question often. And if you know if your twins are fraternal or identical, you probably have a ready answer. But is it really true? Is there a genetic connection? And for those who've used fertility treatments, this question may take on a completely different dimension for you. Whether or not you've used fertility treatments in the past, you may be wondering, what are the chances of having another set of twins? I'm Dr. Brooke Friedman from San Diego Fertility Center, and I'm here to talk about some of the myths of twinning. This is Twin Talks.
The ultrasound shows your babies to be healthy.
What? Did you say babies? You're huge. Are you having twins?
Are they natural?
Which one do you like better?
Twins, huh? My neighbor's cousin's brother's uncle's a twin.
So can they read each other's minds?
How do you tell them apart?
Twins? You got a 2-for-1.
Do twins run in your family?
Double trouble. You're not having any more, are you?
At least you're not Octomom.
If you're pregnant with twins or you're an experienced twin parent, odds are you've heard it all before. Now it's time to hear from the experts. This is Twin Talks, Parenting Times 2. Well, welcome to Twin Talks. We are broadcasting from the Birth Education Center of San Diego. And Twin Talks is your weekly online, on-the-go support group for expecting and new parents of twins. I'm your host, Christine Stewart Fitzgerald. Have you heard about the Twin Talks Club? Our members get bonus content after each new show, plus special giveaways and discounts. Subscribe to the monthly Twin Talks newsletter and learn about the latest episodes available. Another way for you to stay connected is by downloading our free Twin Talks app, and it's available in the Android, iTunes, and the Windows Marketplace. And before we get started, I want to hand this over to Sunny, who's our producer.
Yeah, so I want to tell you guys a few ways that you guys can get involved with Twin Talks. We have a couple of fun segments on the show that you'll probably enjoy. One is called Twin Oops, and that's where we share our funny stories that we've experienced with our set of twins, triplets, multiples, fill in the blank, all the funny things that happen. If you've got a great story, we would love to hear, and we'd love to put it on our show. You can ask our experts questions as well. So as we're continuing on with today's show, if you think of some good questions, send them in, and we'll have our experts answer them, and we'll put that on a future episode. We have a segment where we talk about funny things that people have said to us out in public with our twins. So that may be something you want to submit to. There's a whole section on the website that explores this and kind of goes into more detail. So if you go to newmommymedia.com and go over to Twin Talks under the shows tab, you'll see a section called segments, and in there you can see the various ways you can get involved. And if you do want to submit, there's a couple great ways to submit. You can either through the website, you can go to the contact link, or you can call our voicemail at 619-866-4775, and you can tell your story yourself as opposed to us telling it for you. So there you go.
And Sunny, okay, now you have to, since you are a panelist today.
Yes. Oh,
so
yes.
Tell us about your family.
My family. Okay, so I have 4 kids total, and my oldest just turned 5 and a boy. And then I have another boy who's 3 and does everything the 5-year-old does. And then my twins, I have twin girls that are almost 22 months to be exact. Yes. So, yeah. And they were, they're identical, so supposedly everything's, just happenstance, whoops, my egg split. So we'll see.
Yes.
No twins that I know of really in my family. Some stuff way back when, but nothing that you would actually, attribute to my pregnancy. So, yeah.
Okay, and then on the phone with us today, we have Natalie. So tell us a little bit about your family and your story. I think everyone really needs to hear this.
I guess I'll bring it back to my mom. My mom first had 8 of us, 2 sets of triplets, and then a set of twins.
Oh, my gosh.
So take that and then go to our next branch of the multiple side, I guess. And let's start with the eldest 3 of us, which are all girls. And my eldest sister, Cassie, has had a set of twins, identical girls. Then she has a singleton. Then come to me. I am the middle. And my story is a little different. I have had 11 babies total now. I have 3 sets of twins. My eldest set of twins is going to be 4 and 2 months. My second set of twins are identical girls, and they are 2.5. My third set of twins are identical boys, and they are 17 months and 2 days, if you want to get exact. I have a singleton who is going to be 10 months. Then I just recently had, and they are 2 weeks old, I had quadruplets. 3 baby boys and 1 beautiful baby girl.
You have won the jackpot.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
You have absolutely won
So
the
if
jackpot.
you lost count, that is 11 total. And then finally, we round out the oldest of the triplets, and that's my sister Becca, and she has had twin identical boys, and they will be 3.5.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow. Now, okay, so if I'm hearing this correctly, then your mother has so the 2 sets of triplets, and they were, I'm assuming, fraternal, and then
Me and my sisters are fraternal, and then my mom had triplet boys, and they are actually identical, and they are all boys, and then my mom had a set of twin boy-girl fraternal.
And then Natalie, hopefully I'm not saying something you don't want to be revealed, and if I am, let me know. But then your singleton baby girl that you just had was originally a triplet pregnancy, correct?
She was originally a triplet pregnancy, and it was her in one sac and the twins in another. So I basically lost 2 of them, and my singleton was a rainbow baby.
yes, she survived her vanishing siblings.
Yes, exactly.
Wow. So it sounds like you had a mix of both identical and fraternal.
They're not all fraternal now.
Have there been any fertility treatments involved in any of the births for either your mother or your sisters or yourself, or is it all spontaneous?
My mom did go through fertility treatments.
Mm-hmm.
She went through fertility treatments with the twins. She did conceive the girls and the boy triplets naturally. My sister Cassie did do fertility treatments for her twins. Both me and my sister Becca conceived all of our multiples naturally.
Wow. It's just hard for us to get our head around
I know,
this.
right? It is. It's amazing.
So, I just wanted to take a moment and talk about a headline that just recently came out. The headline reads, "Mother gives birth to 3 sets of twins at 500,000 to 1 odds." So, so I think if you guys have got that going. But here's the story. A couple from Scotland, 16 years ago, they gave birth to twin boys. And then 2 years later, they beat the odds again, and they welcomed another set of boys. And so, she's a dance instructor and events man. They had their hands full, and they were, very happy to have 2 sets of twin boys. And then 10 years go by, and life settles down, and the boys are teenagers. And then she's 41 years old, and she gets a pregnancy scan, and she finds out that she's pregnant. And yes, we know it, that she's pregnant with twins. And now thankfully it turned out this 3rd set was a set of girls, so they're kind of balancing out a little bit. But this is 500,000 to 1. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I have no idea what the odds are in your family.
No, lower than that. The hard thing is that we're taking something that's uncommon, meaning to have really, among the people you're talking to, your parents of twins, but just in the general population, it's uncommon to have fraternal twins, even more uncommon to have identical twins. So then among that population, the recurrence rate, it just hasn't really been very well studied. In general, like we've talked about, we know there are certain risk factors and that there's well-identified genetic component to having fraternal twins. More so than having monozygotic or identical twins. But the specific recurrence rates aren't that well defined just because you're taking something rare, and then among that rare event, like you described, the 500,000 to 1 odds, it's pretty uncommon. You're having lightning strike a couple times.
Right, and it would be hard to find that many subjects if you're doing a formal study.
And that's the thing, because the rate, let's say, of identical twins in the general population is about 0.5%. Mm-hmm. So that's less than 1%. So then you're taking, I know. So then among that population, in terms of having that happen again, we're talking about a pretty rare event.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're here today with Dr. Brooke Friedman, who's going to help us wade through some of these myths that we hear about twinning in the headlines, in the social media. And Dr. Friedman, she's a board-certified reproductive endocrinologist and infertility specialist, and she's here to set the record straight. So thanks for joining us today, Dr. Friedman.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Maybe we could just take a step back and just talk about the statistics for fraternals and identical. So what are kind of these overall statistics in both unassisted, I should say spontaneous, as well as assisted in infertility treatment?
Sure. So fraternal, so non-identical, so meaning twins that come from two different eggs. In the general population, spontaneously, it's really about 13 per thousand, depending on where you're looking at, or more easier to think about as more like 2 to 3%, depending. Okay. And that's going to vary depending actually where you are in the world. So there are geographic variations. Ethnic variations, but in general, it's about 2 to 3%. And that's spontaneous conceptions. For identical twins, like I mentioned, it's only about 0.5%. So it's really low, less than 1% of identical twins spontaneously. Now, if we're talking about the world of infertility treatment, then those numbers change dramatically. So for fraternal twins, so non-identical twins, with fertility treatment, if someone's taking a medication that causes them to release more than one egg, then you're going to be dramatically increasing the risk of a twin. So it depends on what medications we're taking and what treatment. If someone's taking something like Clomid, which is a common fertility drug, the rate of twins can be as high as 8 to 10%. So you've already increased it quite a bit. With IVF, in vitro fertilization, if 2 embryos are transferred, then the rate of twinning could be as high as 30 to 50%. So that's pretty high. So that you're dramatically increasing the chance. Obviously, if you're transferring a single embryo, then you're decreasing your chance of twinning. So it really depends on what fertility treatment, but certainly all across the spectrum of fertility treatment, whether more than one egg is released or more than one embryo is put back, you're going to be increasing the chance of having more than one embryo implant. In terms of identical twins, in the world of IVF, the risk of identical twinning is increased quite a bit as compared to spontaneous identical twins. So we said, again, about 0.5%. With IVF, some studies have shown it to be as high as anywhere between 1 and 10%. So pretty high. And it's not really well understood, I'll be honest. Some studies have suggested that may have something to do with what happens in the lab in terms of if there's any manipulation to the shell around the embryo. Some studies have suggested that the longer that embryo remains in the lab in culture, meaning growing after fertilization, to 5 days as opposed to 3 days, that may increase the chance of it splitting. Other studies haven't found that to be true. There was a very interesting study done just this year, actually, where a clinic looked back over all of their identical twins in IVF. And a lot of the conventional things like time and culture, after fertilization, which we thought have been really well described, they didn't see that to be as much of an association. But when they went back and did a family history, like what we're talking about, they found that those who had an embryo split actually did have a family history of twinning. Wow. So I think that conventional wisdom has told us that identical twins don't have a genetic component, but I think the more we learn that there very well may be a genetic component like we're talking about with these studies, which is not very well understood and is probably uncommon.
Yes.
But for some people with identical twins, clearly there has to be a genetic component.
And I think in Natalie's family case, if you've got multiple sets of identical twins, I mean, now some of them, there were fertility treatments involved, and others it was completely spontaneous. So, and I think, Natalie, you shared it was at different generations, right? So.
Yeah. So I think we're learning a lot.
And now going back to fraternal twins. So fraternal twins, you had mentioned that that the twinning rate can vary in different parts of the world. So for those who are not as a result of fertility treatments and just purely spontaneous, what are some of those factors that are behind it?
So in terms of spontaneous twinning, a couple risk factors. We talked about the genetic component. Women who are older are, like you've alluded to, have an increased risk of twins. And that's really because of what happens as we get older. Some of the hormonal changes, our brain secretes more hormones, specifically FSH or follicle stimulating hormone. So more than one egg may be released at the same time in that month. And so that is a large part of why we think women as we get older are at increased risk of twins. Also, women who've had a previous pregnancy are at increased risk of twins. Also, women, when they looked across studies, who are interestingly taller or have a BMI over 30.
Wow.
So
if you're tall or large.
That explains so much.
And it's hard to know, how that relates back to genetics. Is it really because women are taller, or is it that, women who have a family history, are they all tall? We don't, no one really knows. We're just looking across studies. So those are the things that have been fairly well described. But beyond that, those are the main factors.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And then now when we talk about, releasing 2 eggs time, I think that's known as hyperovulation, right? Okay. I'm trying to, as a lay person, yes, the whole terminology here. So, I've heard that this is passed down then through generation. Can you tell us a little bit about, how it's passed down?
Yeah. What's interesting is the specific variations are not as well described, but it does seem to be passed down through the mother. Okay. Meaning if I see a couple and the mother has twins and let's say that the woman has twins and the husband has twins, it's really the mother's family history that matters for that couple's risk of having a twin. However, the father can pass that trait down to his daughter, meaning that then his daughter may have an increased risk of twins if he has twins on his family.
That's interesting.
But it's not necessarily if a couple comes to me and the woman doesn't have a history of twins in her family, but the father does. It doesn't appear from what we know that individual couples would have a high risk of twins, but their daughter may have an increased risk of twinning.
The woman needs to have either a mother or a father that has the family history
exactly
with that genetic trait.
Correct. Yeah.
Wow. So Natalie, then I take it. So you said on your mother's side, she had identical and fraternals, and then now did you mention on your father's side as well there was history of twinning?
Or your husband?
Oh, on my husband's side, yes. My husband is a triplet, but his mom only had him and his brothers. So my mother-in-law would have had twins as well. So like either her and her brothers and sisters, one of them would have been a set of twins. But it's interesting to hear that, it did start with my grandma, it goes on to my mom, and then goes on to me. And then, so far I've got 5 girls all possibly carrying the multiple gene.
Yes.
So it's interesting to hear one of my daughters may have 11 kids.
That's a good possibility.
Think of how many grandkids that means you're going to have.
It's going to be a large family.
And then you've had it, so going direct from generation. Now, I've heard there's this common myth I've heard about skipping a generation. So does that mean maybe it's going through the father's line?
I think that's probably where that's coming from, because if then in effect would skip a generation if, let's say, a man's mother had a history of twinning, and then let's say it would skip that immediate, and then go to
his daughter.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Exactly.
That would make sense. Okay, switching over back to the identical side, Dr. Freeman, you had talked about the splitting in the lab. Now, what about in just the natural, spontaneous setting? Do we have any idea what's behind that?
We don't know much. And what's interesting is that we don't see the kind of as much of the ethnic and geographic variations with identical twinning like we do with fraternal twins. And so I think we just know less about what the various factors are that contribute. It's also harder to study this rare event. But there aren't really well described risk factors for identical twinning apart from this potential family history.
Okay, the family, because I had heard somewhere that there's a theory, just a theory right now. So there's no real true study or hard evidence. Yeah, the theory is that I'll just say chemicals for lack of my understanding within the sperm itself caused the egg to split. So some sperm would contain some type of substance that might trigger a complete split rather than a divide.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. I think there are some studies that have tried to look at this. It's just not been that well described. And I should say that in general, the conventional wisdom is still that there is less of a genetic risk factor to identical twinning, and it's really been only a handful of studies that have tried to look at this in the IVF population. But in general, I think the conventional wisdom is really, it's clear that there's a genetic component to fraternal twinning, less clear with regard to identical twinning, but there certainly is this suggestion that there is a component of genetic risk factor as well.
Yes. Now, I have to say, so I have, ID girls and a singleton, and she's a girl as well. So I like to blame it all on my husband. so I basically, I told him that he's the one that chose the sex. I had nothing to do with that.
Which is true.
You can't blame me, right?
Yep.
And for our ID girls, I said, well, yep, I think it's your sperm caused them to split. I had nothing to do with that.
It's possible.
I bought my husband a T-shirt for Christmas last Christmas that said "Real men make twins."
Yes.
And I'm like, yep, it was all you.
That's great.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about the myths of twinning and what families using fertility treatments should consider. Well, welcome back. Today we're talking with Dr. Brooke Friedman about the myths of twinning. Now, we touched on some possible causes of spontaneous twins, but what about twins resulting from the use of reproductive technologies? So I think you touched on a little bit earlier about, families are using fertility treatments, and we do know the risk of twinning is much higher for fraternal twins. And then identicals, I think you had mentioned a little bit about the process of handling in the lab. And can you comment on both of them?
Sure. So with regard to fertility treatments, anytime a woman takes a medication that's going to encourage her ovaries to release more than one egg, then she's going to be increasing her risk of having twins. And with regard to IVF, it does seem that there is an increased likelihood of an embryo splitting after it's implanted into the uterus. So meaning in the lab, the embryo doesn't split, but after we put it back into the uterus, if that embryo has been created as part of an IVF cycle, there is an increased risk of that embryo splitting as compared to what we see in the general population of the risk of an embryo splitting in the uterus. So I think we don't really know exactly why. Different theories have been proposed with regard to what happens in the lab. But the truth of it is it's a little bit unclear exactly why these embryos have an increased risk of splitting after they're transferred back to the uterus. I think it's certainly something that each couple should talk to their doctor about if they're undergoing fertility treatments with regard to how their doctor would counsel them individually with regard to their risk of twins. Each woman's risk is different based upon how her ovaries respond, based upon her age, and based upon her family history, like we've talked about. So I think it's certainly really important to get that individualized counseling. And so for women to really ask their doctor, what do you think my risk of twins are? And to really have an understanding of what the risks are with each treatment, so that everyone's on the same page.
I've heard that, let's just say that the philosophy can vary from practice to practice when it comes to, fertility treatments. And aside from the use of IVS, where you can transfer multiple embryos, are there any other factors in terms of just the the standard operating procedures and practices that families considering fertility treatments should ask their doctor, like, how do you approach this? I mean, what should they be asking their doctors when getting a consultation?
Absolutely. So I think you hit on a really important one, and that is asking their fertility doctor, what is your practice and what would you recommend with regard to single versus double embryo transfer. So, and again, that decision is usually individualized based upon patient's age and embryo quality, and a lot of things go into that decision. But certainly it's really important to have that discussion with someone's individual physician. When women take fertility medications like Clomid or sometimes injectable medications to cause the ovaries to make eggs, normally they're monitored, meaning we do ultrasounds to see, okay, how many eggs are growing this month. And so I think in that situation, it's important for the woman to ask her doctor, how many follicles rather do you see growing? A follicle is that fluid-filled sac where the eggs develop. And to say, well, what are my risks of twins, do you think, this month? And like we talked about, that's going to vary depending on age, depending on someone's history and their family history. So I think those are all questions that are important to ask because each month may be different. So I think certain physicians, if they see too many follicles growing, are going to recommend canceling a cycle. Like, for example, if I see someone who has recruited too many eggs in a given month, I'm going to say the risk of twins or higher order multiples is too high, and I recommend canceling and not doing an intrauterine insemination and not trying it home this month because it can vary month to month. So it is really important to do that monitoring with ultrasound to be able to help prevent at least iatrogenic, higher order multiples or iatrogenic twins if possible. And
it sounds like you're taking a more conservative approach, and there might be other endocrinologists and in fertility who may be more liberal, I guess, in terms of harvesting and implanting or...
I think there's going to be variations in practice patterns. So certainly I think it's important just to kind of individualize the counseling for each patient, and every patient's risks are going to be different. So I think certainly it's important to have that conversation with their physician. I think we know that twins do carry a higher risk of complications potentially. So certainly I think it would make the most sense to try to minimize that risk if possible.
Yes. And I'm just curious. So I know that Sunny here and we have identical twins because now when I found out that they were identical, I felt like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, so this is good. This means I'm not hyper-ovulating, and so my risks aren't changing. It's okay to have more kids. But I don't know. Is there really any difference, as far as, for those who've had identical versus, fraternal spontaneously?
I think it's a great question. I think the answer is we don't really know. I think it's clear that there is... for someone who's had fraternal twins, there's more of a genetic component, so they're probably at increased risk of having another set of fraternal twins. With regard to splitting, like you mentioned, this 500,000 to 1 odds of this woman who had multiple sets of twins. I think there very well may be some increased risk, but it just really hasn't been well described in terms of how to quantify that increased risk. So I think you're safe.
We're safe. Okay, for now we're safe.
And then, but gosh,
until more research comes out.
Right? Exactly.
Well, thanks so much for everyone for joining us today, and be sure to visit our episode page on our website for more information about Dr. Friedman, as well as links to additional resources. Now, this conversation continues for members of the Twin Talks Club, and after the show, Dr. Friedman will address some myths about spontaneous twinning. So, for more information about the Twin Talks Club, visit our website, newmommymedia.com.
Okay, it's time for one of our favorite segments on the show. It's called We're Expecting What? And that's where you guys get a chance to tell us about your funny stories of when you found out you were pregnant with twins. This story comes from Krista, and Krista says, I am 18 and a mother-to-be of 2 baby girls. We found out I was pregnant at 6 weeks, and we were excited. I talked with my sister-in-law because she was pregnant with her 3rd. She referred me to her doctor. My brother joked, saying, I'm going to have 2. After going to the doctor a couple times, he told me that I was bigger than he thinks I should be. He says, do you think there's twins? Me and my boyfriend laughed. He then scheduled an ultrasound to check for twins. We were in shock. We couldn't wait the 2 weeks to find out. The ultrasound showed 2 babies, and I'll never forget the feeling I got when I saw them both. My heart melted. I was excited and scared at the same time. I'm now 21 weeks and very used to the thought of twins. I'm very excited, but I'm also very nervous about having them early and their health, what kind of health they're going to be in, all the things that can go wrong. All I can do is hope and pray they are healthy. Well, Krista, we certainly hope that you have a fantastic rest of your pregnancy. You're more than halfway there. So hopefully things are still going really well for you. And we'll just kind of keep you in our thoughts. And thanks for writing this in.
Well, that wraps up our show for today. We appreciate you listening to Twin Talks. Don't forget to check out our sister show, Preggy Pals, for expecting parents, our show, The Boob Group, for moms who breastfeed their babies, Parent Savers, your parenting resource on the go, and our newest show, Newbies, for new parents. This is Twin Talks, Parenting Times 2.
This has been a New Mommy Media production. The information and material contained in this episode are presented for educational purposes only. Statements and opinions expressed in this episode are not necessarily those of New Mommy Media and should not be considered facts. While such information and materials are believed to be accurate, it is not intended to replace or substitute for professional medical advice or care, and should not be used for diagnosing or treating healthcare problem or disease or prescribing any medication. If you have questions or concerns regarding your physical or mental health or the health of your baby, please seek assistance from a qualified healthcare provider.
New Mommy Media is expanding our lineup of shows for new and expecting parents. If you have an idea for a new series, or if you're a business or organization interested in joining our network of shows through a co-branded podcast, visit newmommymedia.com. Hey mamas, don't forget to check out Mighty Moms. It's our online community built for new moms just like you. Not only can you connect with other moms, but you can also join us backstage for special mom-only online events. And you'll also be notified when we're recording so you can join us as a special guest. Visit our website, newmommymedia.com, and click on the Mighty Moms banner. It's free. That's newmommymedia.com. See you there.